Yes,
Is the
I just
sound
missed
quality
what
good?
you said. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, you guys. As always, give a little shout out in the comments if you can hear us. Um, Tonight, I am joined by a special guest who your assistant actually reached out to me, Reed. And this is a show like I've never done. I've interviewed lawyers, but not like this. So you'll have to excuse my ignorance. I read up as much as possible. But tonight I am joined by Lloyd Chapman. You are the president of the American Small Business League, and he is suing the Trump administration for fraud in the Paycheck Protection Program. So thank you so much for joining us, Lloyd. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Um, Thanks, Cirrus. Sounds good. So I guess the first question is kind of rudimentary, but how did you get started in doing this? Because you've done a lot of cases. So what kind of, made it all begin?
Well, my father was a contracting officer for the Air Force. He actually worked for the CIA, and then he retired and became a contracting officer for the Air Force in Sacramento. And I went to work for a little computer company that was trying to get some subcontracts to provide software. And my father told me how to do a Freedom of Information Act request to try to find government contractors that were looking for small businesses to do business with. And the first thing I did, I wound up in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals winning a landmark legal decision that established what was releasable in government data for over 30 years. I thought it was gonna be like sending somebody a letter and say, can you please, send me something? But yeah, it was 3 years in court and $250,000. And it was the first case I won. I won about 110 now. And my lawyers tell me that's a record. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have won 110. And my win ratio against the government for 30 years is 98.5%.
That is incredible. So I'm guessing that people kind of know your name and don't want to mess with you. I'm kind of guessing.
Yeah. Well, the government knows my name. They know me in the federal courthouse in San Francisco. They know me in Washington.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Your organization is nonpartisan, so I do want to say that even though you're suing the Trump administration, you have sued other administrations in the past. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I've sued everybody. I started suing the government, I think, during the first Bush administration. What was that, in 89, I think? Yeah, so I've sued the Bush administration. Actually, I think, was Reagan president in 89? I don't know. I don't remember. But I've sued every administration since 1989. And yeah, I'll tell you something interesting. I think you and your viewers will find this interesting. When you sue the government, they don't like it. They don't like it. And they use all their resources to try to dissuade you from suing them. And their resources of the FBI and the Justice Department and the NSA and the CIA, all their resources. And I think if you and your viewers haven't seen it, there's a documentary series on Amazon called Truth and Power. And if you watch those documentaries, there's Truth and Power, there's United States of Secrets, there's Silence, there's a War on Whistleblowers. There's a dozen documentaries that show that when you sue the government under the Freedom of Information Act, they don't like it. And they try to dissuade you from doing that. And when I think back on the last 32 years, any whistleblower or anyone like myself that has exposed corruption, fraud in government, they've been silenced in one way or another. I would say 95% of them. A couple of them, got away, but yeah, they don't like it. They don't like it one bit.
Yeah. I mean, not to be like overly dramatic, but do you ever fear for your safety at all?
Well, yeah, yeah, I do. I got my first death threat around 1990, and someone said, "Lloyd, line 2 for you," and I picked it up. I go, "Hello," and the guy goes, "If you don't drop that lawsuit, you're going to get hurt." He says, "You're interfering with the largest government contract in history, and if you don't drop, you're going to get hurt." And I thought it was a friend of mine playing a joke on me, right? But I got about 4 or 5 of those calls, and over the course of about a year. And the last one I got, I was kind of tired of it. And the guy said I was going to get hurt. And I said, "I tell you what, I'm from Texas. I got a big 6-shooter. Tell me where to meet you, and you can try to hurt me." And that was the last one of those I got. That was probably like 1991, something like that. But the things. Let me just say this: I almost don't want to talk about it because it's so different than what people think. I don't think people would even believe it. But the things they do, again, if you watch the documentaries, I think what happened in the Black Lives Matter thing recently is they found out they were using military drones to fly over the protesters with what's called a stingray, and they downloaded or uploaded all their cell phones. Have you heard about that?
No.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's called a stingray, and I've had them use it on me. So they used Predator drones. This was in the news to fly over the protesters using these devices that uploads other cell phones. And in the Truth and Power, the very first documentary on Truth and Power is about Black Lives Matter, and it shows how this black vehicle is following along next to the protesters, and someone picked up the communications between the police station and the vehicle, and they're talking about how they're uploading all their phones and to determine where they're going and what they're doing. But it's called a stingray. But they've been doing that for about a decade.
Wow, that's terrifying. I mean, I saw the vans and everything, but that I didn't see. That makes so much sense because I did a protest for net neutrality, and we were outside a Comcast building, and all of our signals just shut down completely.
Yeah.
And we were live streaming stuff like that, and it was just very creepy, very 1984-ish.
Oh yeah. Well, you asked me if I fear for my safety. Yeah. My ex-wife, my girlfriend, told me not to mention this, but I'll just give you a brief thing. As I'm talking to you right now, I've got a traumatic brain injury and I have permanent brain damage. And about 18 months ago, I was involved in a very unusual car accident. Just before I was going to Washington to meet with some investigative journalists with some information that I'd gotten from a lawsuit I won from the Pentagon. And I'm in court with that right now. I can't talk about it much, but it was, it doesn't, I'll just say it's very suspicious. I'll just say that, right? So if I forget what I'm talking about, you'll have to remind me because, yeah, it's like I said, I can't think of anybody that was either a whistleblower or an activist that they didn't go after and ultimately silence.
Wow, that's terrifying, but we need truth tellers like yourself. So you're brave to keep
Thank
going
you.
Regardless. Wow. What's that?
When they do things like that, it just makes me mad. It doesn't scare me. It just makes me mad. In fact, since the accident, the government has had to pay me, let me think, over $500,000 to repay me for the legal fees for cases I've won. So since the accident, I've won a number of legal victories against the government. And by the way, I'm filing 2 more cases. If my lawyer didn't file them today, we'll file them next week. So it motivates me, quite frankly. I'm almost kind of happy because I get bored. I'm 71, I get bored. and they do stuff to me, and it's like, I think, I was getting bored, I was going to drop this, but now I'm motivated. Let's sue the Fed some more. It's fun.
Well, if I say something stupid, don't sue me, because I this is all new to me.
No,
And I have nothing. So
yeah, I just sue the government. Would you like to see something interesting? I'm going to show you something interesting. Ready?
Yeah, sure.
This is what I got from the Pentagon after I was in court for 7 years and spent just under $1 million. And I won this case under the Freedom of Information Act. Ready? This is what I got.
What?
That's what I got. That's a win.
Oh my gosh.
That's a win. I won that. I didn't lose that. I won
Wow.
that. Now, not all the pages are blacked out. This is kind of what most of them look like. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh.
That's $1 million in 7 years in federal court. And I just want to know, can I see who you're giving small business contracts to? And they said no. One thing I found out was they were getting small business contracts to some multi-billion-dollar international company. Here's another page. So the funny thing I found is anytime you talk to the government about something that sounds as benign as small business contracting, you're going to federal court for years. And what you find is it's fraudulent. The whole thing's fraudulent.
Wow, that is incredible. And as trite as it is, I have to wonder, why are you trying to hide something if you're not doing anything correct?
You know what? Exactly. Good point. In my current case against the Trump administration, I'm asking for the names of all the firms that got the PPP money and the exact amounts everybody got. And they won't release it. And the main group they won't release is companies that got up to 150,000. And so they release people that got millions, but they won't release the names of the people that got up to 150,000. My suspicion is, in fact, I would bet money on it, that they've used the PPP program to what I call launder money into his campaign. And it's already been reported in the news that some of his biggest donors that actually were not small business owners got millions, right? People that didn't need the money. And the sad thing is, legitimate small businesses, millions of them are failing. I've heard up to a third of all small business in America, that's 10 million, are gone forever because they've diverted that money to maybe his biggest campaign donors or even smaller donors, but not to legitimate small business. It's very, very tragic.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. And you do make a point in the press release as well that, a lot of the people that suffer from this are women and people of color.
Oh, yeah. In fact, it looks like that Black and Hispanic-owned small businesses were almost excluded from the program. Here's some statistics that people aren't aware of. 98% of all American companies have less than 100 employees. And the most shocking number I found was, this is U.S. Census Bureau data, that those companies with less than 100 employees are responsible for 99% of all the net new jobs in America. Think about that. So 98% of all American companies have less than 100 employees, 89% have less than 20, and the average American company has 10 employees. And that's who should have gotten that PPP money, right? So I would say the vast majority of that PPP money should have gone to companies with 100 employees or less. And, I think they probably got maybe 10% of the money. And, so the fact that they won't release it is, it's a clear indication they're trying to hide something. And, particularly before the election.
Absolutely. Yeah. A tweet recently that said that they're desperately trying to stall you until after the election.
Yeah. We had
Not surprising.
Yeah, we had a hearing set up. What we filed was called a summary judgment motion with the court. And that's where we asked the court, based upon all the information that you have, you should be able to make a decision, in our favor. and there's supposed to be a hearing on October 9th. And I thought the judge was going to grant our summary judgment motion and force them to release information before the election. But now they pushed that hearing off until I think the 22nd. So we're trying to get it before the election, but they're doing everything they can to withhold it. And another thing that I think people will find surprising, if you sue the government, or if you want to uncover fraud in the government, or if people who are employed by the government are violating federal law, you got to go through the Justice Department. That's something that surprises me every day, right? They should change it to the Injustice Department, right? In one of my most recent cases, Judge William Alsup described me as being in a David and Goliath battle against big government, big business, and he accused the Justice Department of suppressing evidence and covering up evidence. And but yeah, if you want to uncover fraud in the government, you got to have a lot of money and fight the Justice Department. And they should be on my side. If I'm trying to uncover federal agencies violating federal law and cheating the American people, the Justice Department should be helping me. No, they're not helping me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my biggest enemy is the Justice Department in trying to uncover fraud.
I digress for a little, but all of this is kind of reminded me a little bit about the Pentagon Papers. It seems like there's some similarities in there of just reaction and trying to hide things. And is that something you've ever looked into yourself?
Fraud at the Pentagon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's what this is about. This is right.
You're right. That one.
What's in this black box is fraud. That's why you can't see it, right? But I would say the level of fraud and corruption in the Pentagon is 1,000 times worse than the average American would believe. It's just astounding. It's just astounding. In 2016, the Pentagon Inspector General released a report and said the Pentagon could not find $6.5 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
And if the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld held a press conference and said that they couldn't find 2.3 trillion. And he described the Pentagon in that speech the day before 9/11 that the Pentagon was America's biggest enemy. It was quite, if you could go on the internet and find it, it's on my website under ASPL.com and WadeChapman.com, I think. But that speech by Rumsfeld the day before 9/11 is quite shocking. In fact, I tell you something, you know what it sounds like if you can listen to it? It sounds exactly like what Eisenhower said in his last speech when he said, beware of the growing power of the military-industrial complex. Are you familiar with that speech? The military-industrial complex, yeah. Well, Rumsfeld said almost the exact same thing the day before 9/11. But anyway, the corruption of the Pentagon is just, it's trillions. It's not millions, it's not billions, it's trillions, right? And, but they've got a lot of power.
How do you exactly misplace trillions of dollars?
Tell me about it. Well, the Pentagon is the only federal agency that I'm aware of that doesn't have to account for their spending. They've got so much power that if anybody in Congress pushes, for a big audit, I think they sort of go after them. In fact, I know they do. So corporations will make contributions to get favors from people in Congress. I think the Pentagon, threatens them or puts pressure on them, right? But it's kind of sad when you think about it. I grew up, in the early 50s, and after World War II, and my uncle was killed in World War II. I'm named after him. And I grew up being very patriotic, and I was ready to join the army to go to Vietnam, right? Because I thought it was my duty, right? And now to see what I found out, it's just so disappointing. And it's just much worse than you would know if you're a normal person because it's not in the newspaper. For example, that Pentagon audit in 2016, I think it was, you can Google 6.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon and find a few websites that talk about it. So anybody that's curious about that, Google 6.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon, you can see that. But that should have been on the front page of the New York Times and the LA Times and the Wall Street Journal. They should have been congressional hearings like Watergate to talk about that, right? But I've never seen something that should have been that big get almost no news coverage. So
absolutely. Also, so speaking of, I'm looking at the comments. No accountability is a problem. Absolutely, Jilly. Are there other organizations that can't be audited?
I think that the Pentagon is the worst. I focus on the Pentagon and the Small Business Administration, but I would think that any major agency, it's going to be hard, like NASA. See, one thing I noticed when I ask for simple information from federal agencies like NASA, I've got to go to federal court. The things that I ask for should be on the internet, quite frankly. So as opposed to me having to sue for all this information, it should be on the internet. You know, the names of every company the government gives contracts to, the name of every company that Pentagon prime contractors give subcontracts to, the names of all the people who got PPP loans, that should be on the internet, but it's not, right? So, but I would say to your viewer there that the corruption across the government is just astounding. It's just astounding. Here's something that I am thinking about that I'll share with you and see if you think it's interesting. 200,000 people have now died from the coronavirus, over 200,000. And I believe the last time I looked, that's more Americans have died from the coronavirus than had died in every war from World War I up into now, right? Wow. The CDC budget is 11.1 billion. The Pentagon budget, the official budget is around 800 billion. They spend closer to $1 trillion. So think about this. The threat to you and me and our families and our friends and all the people in America is not terrorists. It's cancer, it's heart disease, now it's a coronavirus, right? And older Americans have to worry about, prostate cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer. And the agency to protect us from the diseases that are the real killers, that agency's budget is just pennies compared to the Pentagon, right? So the threat to all of us is heart disease, cancer, the coronavirus, and we need to spend a lot more money on that. If I could talk to Joe Biden, I would say you need to take the CDC budget from 11.1 billion to at least 100 billion and cut that money out of the Pentagon budget.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I never realized that it was so low. Especially now of all times, should be, first of all, a reason for everyone to get Medicare for all, but also to have a bigger budget for the CDC. That's really incredible. Speaking of, the pandemic. Thank you. Do you think that Trump being, getting coronavirus is going to halt your process or anything like that? Do you think it's still going to take place this month?
Yeah. It's not going to stop anything. I think it's what's the word? Ironic that he's gotten the coronavirus after he was like, I'll mask, the hell with that bullshit. I'm not going to wear a mask. Right? I don't need a stinking mask. And it turns out you did, bro. You should have had a mask.
Yeah. Oh, the irony. You stated that uh let me see here. The US Census Bureau indicates 98% of all firms in the US have less than 100 employees, which you touched
Yep.
on. And they're responsible for 97% of new
Uh-huh.
jobs, which should go to the majority of business loans. Let's say that this this is successful. How could you or the government or what have you implement something so that it guarantees that these more mom and pop places will be getting the money there forth? Is it mainly just because it would be more transparent, or is there something that could be put in place to kind of guarantee it?
Well, I'm afraid it's too late. It's too late. They have spent, I'd say 90% of the money they're going to spend to stimulate the economy. They've spent it. It's gone. And it went to the wrong place. So it increased the national debt by, I think it's 4 trillion. Remember that? I think that's what they spent, but they didn't give it to the small businesses. It's too late. And think about, there's about 30 million small businesses in America. They're responsible for, 90% of all the jobs. And a third of them, it's been reported, are gone forever. They're never coming back. So that means about a third of the new jobs, the companies that create a third of jobs, they're gone. So I don't think that has hit yet. I think it's going to hit either later on this year or the first part of next year. But I think it's going to be devastating to the economy. Here's my my best suggestion. Federal law, the Small Business Act, says that small businesses shall get a minimum of 23% of all federal spending, which is really about 1.5 trillion. I just got a legal opinion from Professor Charles Tiefer, and he is the most preeminent expert in America on federal contracting and federal contracting law. He was the attorney for the House of Representatives for over a decade. President Obama appointed him to serve on the commission to investigate spending in Iraq and Afghanistan. So Professor Tiefer is just, he's the top expert. And the legal opinion he gave me a few days ago seems to indicate that the Trump administration has cheated small businesses out of about $1.2 trillion. So what's happening is, as opposed to giving small businesses 23% of all contracts, they're giving them about 3%. And again, this is where Black and Hispanic owned small businesses are being cheated, dramatically. But the only thing that I can think to do to save our economy is to end the rampant fraud in federal small business contracting programs, comply with the Small Business Act that Eisenhower passed in 1953, and make sure that legitimate small businesses get the 23% of all federal spending they're supposed to get. The Senate Small Business Committee did a study about 10 years ago that said for every 1% government contracts to small businesses went up, it would create 100,000 net new jobs. Well, it looks to me like small businesses are getting 3%. They're supposed to get 23. That's 20% more. So if the federal government would quit cheating small businesses, give them the full 23%, that would create 2 million net new jobs a year. And I think that's what's called deficit neutral. No new spending, no new taxes, just quit cheating small businesses, comply with the law, and create millions of jobs. It would cut the unemployment rate, noticeably. But that's the only thing left that I can think of that's going to save the middle class economy.
Right. So is there no ramifications if things are audited, it's found these huge businesses got these loans, this money incorrectly? There's no way to hold them accountable and say, guess what, you need to pay this back.
In some cases, big businesses that got the money that shouldn't have gotten it were embarrassed and returned the money in some cases, right? Maybe about 10 cases, I think. I think there was one in New York, the Shake Shack, and some friend of Trump's that owned a chain of hotels. I think he gave the money back. But I've talked to so many small business owners. I remember talking to a barber in Oregon. I think he had, one other employee, and he needed, like $10,000 to stay open, right? So many small businesses could have used 5, 10, 15, $20,000, right? And when you look at the millions and millions that they gave away to like the Lakers and the rock band, the Eagles, right? And I think, who was it? I can't think of his name now, some rapper that, got the money. That money could have saved millions of small businesses because they just needed, enough to hold them, to take care of them maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months, right? But it's really tragic, by the way, to talk to these people. I tell you the truth, I talked to her later today. She was crying. She had a little restaurant that she and her husband put their whole life savings into, and they couldn't get a PPP loan. She wanted like $10,000. They couldn't get it, and they had to close it. And she had like a garage sale, whatever you call it, to sell off all of her the furniture, whatever. And she was just crying. It was very sad. But like I said, I think it's going to hit, the Congress and the mainstream media. You never hear mainstream media talking about the fact that small businesses create 98% of the net new jobs. You never hear that. Here's what's fascinating. If you watch CNN or ABC, NBC, CBS, you see all these ads targeted to small businesses, from Verizon and insurance companies and all this stuff, right? But then the news on that channel, they'll never mention it. They'll never mention it. I think I heard some commentator mention once or twice in the last year that small businesses create, all the new jobs. But I remember the first debate, Hillary Clinton got the first question, back when she and Trump were debating. And the first question was about the economy. And the first thing she said was, we need to do something, to help small business because that's where most of the new jobs come from. That was her first thing she said. Trump never mentioned small business during the whole campaign. He never mentioned small business until the coronavirus thing hit. Never mentioned it, right? But I want people to know. I want people to know that small businesses are the heart and soul of this nation's economy. America is a small business economy. And the average American company has 10 employees and 98% less than 100. I want people to remember that. That's who we need to help. Those are the job creators, right? And any economic stimulus should be directed towards those people, not banks, not, guys who own chains of hotels or the Lakers or the Eagles. It needs to go to small businesses.
So these people who are, basically having their businesses shut down, is there any way for them personally to sue for any kind of back pay or anything to maybe get started again or something like that?
Well, they don't have the money to sue the government. It's expensive, right? Like I said, this document here, this document is 26 pages long. $1 million I paid for this, 26 pages, right? So small businesses don't have the money to sue the government. One thing that I think would be a good idea, I've been kind of fantasizing about this for a while, is to get some big law firm to file a class action lawsuit against the government on behalf of legitimate small businesses, right? And against the Small Business Administration. The Small Business Administration, by the way, here's another funny thing. Most people think the Small Business Administration is there to help small businesses. Nothing could be further from the truth. Who do you think gave all that money to the billionaires? Who gave the money to the Lakers and the Eagles and denied loans to companies with 5 employees? That was the Small Business Administration. So I've been a small business advocate for 32 years. And my opinion is the 2 most anti-small business entities on the planet are the Small Business Administration and the Pentagon. In fact, it looks like the Pentagon runs the Small Business Administration. One of the top executives at the SBA is a retired naval commander who's specialized in surface weapons warfare system. His name is Terry Sutherland, and he is one of the top SBA executives. And Trump appointed another naval commander at the SBA. So the SBA's got a lot of people from the Pentagon in it. And but people can Google Fortune 500 firms getting federal small business contracts, corporate giants getting federal small business contracts, and there's just hundreds of stories about that going back 20 years. So yeah, we need to end the fraud for the Small Business Administration. Oh, here's another thing that I think you'll find interesting. The Small Business Administration is the smallest agency in government. Their budget is something like $700 million. And yet they were charged with distributing $500 billion. Think about that. That's like having some mom and pop sandwich shop in charge of, okay, you're in charge of feeding the army, right? Oh, you and your wife and this, your son, yeah, you're going to feed the army with your little, taco stand. But yet to whoever made the decision to let the Small Business Administration deal out that money, that's just, that was stupid.
I feel quite because given the name Small Business Association, obviously I thought it represented small businesses.
No. Well, today in America, federal agencies gave federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms and their subsidiaries. And that policy was drafted by the Small Business Administration over 10 years ago. It was originally called the grandfathering policy. In fact, your viewers and listeners can Google SBA grandfathering policy. And the SBA is, they're the ones that created all the policies that have allowed the government to divert small business money to Fortune 500 firms. And, but yeah, like I said, it's nothing like people think. It's almost, it's just nothing like you would think. The Small Business Administration, 12 years ago, I think it was ABC or CBS did an investigative story about the SBA, and Congress had done some investigating. And I remember the newscaster said, maybe they should start calling it the Big Business Administration. That was on, I think, CBS, something like that, right? But yeah, those stories have come out for probably 18 years now, that the SBA is giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. But the funny thing is, if you're a journalist, you can't get anybody at the SBA to talk to you. So it's a little rinky-dink agency. You should be able to, just walk in the door and sit on some guy's desk and talk to him. Journalists in America, yeah, try talking to Terry Sutherland. Try talking to the SBA administrator and ask her about these PPP programs. Ask her about them diverting federal small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. It'll never happen. You're more likely to talk to Trump than you are to the SBA administrator or Terry Sutherland or any of the upper level SBA executives. If you look at stories about the PPP program, you'll notice that there's always no comment from the SBA. No comment. And they won't comment about my lawsuit. They say it's because it's pending litigation. They talk about pending litigation when they feel like it, but when they're wrong and they're losing, they don't want to talk about it. But yes, I challenge any journalist out there to try to talk to any executive at the SBA about this program. You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to do it. They won't talk to anybody.
Wow. What is something you want viewers to take away from this interview, to maybe something to look into, something to educate others on? What would you like to leave with our viewers?
Well, you remember that movie Network, when the guy said it's time to get mad and I'm not going to take it anymore? You need to realize you're being cheated. The United States government is cheating you. And the middle class is supposed to get about $350 billion a year in federal spending. Makes sense, right? That's where all the jobs come from. And you're being cheated. whether you're a policeman in Florida or a school teacher in Ohio or a restaurant owner in South Dakota, you're being cheated by your government. And you should be mad about that. I see people protesting, all over the place. They should be protesting about being cheated out of this money because it's going to kill and destroy the middle class economy. So I'd like for people to just become more familiar with it. Google Fortune 500 firms getting small business contracts, corporate giants getting small business contracts, become aware of it. And that's what people should be protesting over because that's going to devastate the middle class economy. It already has, by the way. The middle class economy in America has just been going down and down. Robert Reich did a documentary about that, Inequality for All, I think. It documents that. But people should be getting furious about the fact the United States government is cheating us and they're misspending our tax dollars. And I guess the other thing is the CDC budget needs to be 100 billion, not 11 billion, because we got to worry about, the next pandemic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. It's been extremely educational, and people in the comments are having a great discussion. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck with your further cases and with this one coming up this month.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to join you.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, guys.
All righty. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.